The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Good evening. No, do not adjust any settings on your computer. This is not a test. This is not a drill. This is not the emergency broadcast system. What this is Foxy and Squid. Granted, you're wondering yourselves, where's Foxy? Well, I'm glad you asked. Our lovely, adorable little multi-tailed fox, she's off and she's apparently cooking up something in her little laboratory that's going to help with the show. So she said, I'm going to need some time doing something big. So I thought, well, hey, you've got a bug up your ass. You've got things to talk about. Why not go solo? And here we are. So, on somewhat uncharted waters, but in the words of one of the great TV detectives of all time, Sledgehammer, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Now, to start off, I don't know if any of you have been keeping track of celestial things, whether you believe or not, but last weekend there was a lot of really clustered craziness. You had a full moon, and a lunar eclipse, and a comet passing by Earth all in the span of about 5 hours. Well, why is this significant, you ask? Well, there's a bunch of crazy things that have happened to me. And crazy... Okay, I'm going to start aside. And of course, our dear producer, Sean, who is also on tonight, can attest to this. There's something I have called a conundrum count. If you've listened to any other previous podcast where I've mentioned this and other co-hosts have mentioned this, you know what it is. And Sean, I hate to break it, but the conundrum count is at risk of getting higher. I'm going to throw that out there and just get that out of the way. But aside from conundrums, there's been some very weird instances with me personally. And a lot of weird good, like my boss leaving work earlier than usual, which is good because that means I don't have to deal with her. Things like me potentially getting a client for a tax business and the actual first time that someone will pay me in cash to help and file their tax return. So I'm crossing fingers on that one because that could be a big deal. But aside from that, I've had what started as issues sleeping. Really, me being awake an hour before my alarm goes off to work, in part with the raging borderline painful erection, and I'm pretty sure I leaked a little bit. God, I'm way too backed up for my own good. That happened, and Monday subsequently kind of sucked. Yesterday, however, things were different. I got a fairly normal amount of sleep, but I had some very weird dreams. Now, off air, as I was getting ready for the show, I mentioned Saturday Night Live, how they're coming back in, thanks to a certain Agent Orange that's right now supposedly, quote-unquote, running the White House right now. More on that later. They're going to have plenty of material. Now, I reference Saturday Night Live because we all know Melissa McCarthy, wonderful performance, playing Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Now, unfortunately, I don't know all of the details of my dream, but in a first for me to where it's not like I was watching the show as I fell asleep or anything, that particular performance, that character by Melissa McCarthy was the focal point of a particular dream. I wish I could remember more, but unfortunately I didn't wake up from it. And how my mind works is any weird dreams that I tend to remember are always the weirdest ones that I wake up from. And I have journals dating back 7 years to prove it. I unfortunately didn't wake up from that dream because I had another strange, although more interesting dream that revolved around one of my favorite yet sports I talk about the least, because it doesn't get coverage here, thank you very much, network television, Australian rules football. Now, that's more justified because they're closing on the end of their preseason. The regular season's going to start up in about a couple of weeks. My team coming in for the first time since 1955, defending premiers, Western Bulldogs. So I get it. But I'm kind of wondering, why now? Is this something celestial? Is this in my own head? Should I even be questioning it? Because all of these things that are happening to me that are good. Even with the increase in conundrum and making some phone calls and securing backup plans to said conundrums, although getting a curveball from one of my primary conundrums, and that's another story for another podcast. I notice all these things are happening that are good, but they seem to be exclusive to me. I mentioned, if you read the description, why I apologize. Well, number one, if you listen to Soccer to the Max, another fine podcast on W2M Network, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on it, or that Sean's on it, or at the McCreeger herself, Rachel McCreeger's on it, and we're gearing up and getting ready to talk MLS. I say that because in our last episode, we wrapped up our MLS previews. One of the MLS teams is in Minnesota. Newly, you could call it promoted, but the new expansion franchise, Minnesota United FC. Me being me, I don't turn down the opportunity to do any kind of accent or imitation. Naturally, I break out into a Minnesota accent in describing the team. If you listen to it, especially Minnesotans, let me know how I do. I'm at Squid Sportshead. Tweet me until your heart's content. I can take it. Am I off? Am I on? Do I have the right inflection? Am I pronouncing the O's properly? Because I know that's a big thing up there. But I apologize because Minnesotans in my mind are good people. Quirky, liberal. You do the right things a lot of time. Especially shout out to America's Icebox, International Falls. I don't know how you could stand it knowing any given day for a good 3 to 4 month stretch, the temperature will read 40 below zero and not move for hours upon end. You are hardier people than I am sitting here in near 90-degree heat in Florida, even though it's March. I say that. But I kind of do that, and I've been kind of questioning myself. Why do I apologize? And I realize it's for good people. I also mention that because with good people, very long time friend of mine, I'm proud to say she's one of my best friends. Shout out Phoenix if you decide to listen, which I'm probably going to browbeat you into doing, so be prepared and think of this moment when I do that and you get to this point in the podcast. There was a bit of an incident in our job, which continued as part of the weirdness. For the first time really in years, there was a bird that flew into our window, which we both sit near. Because I just hear this loud thud and turn around and we figure out what's going on. Found out that a bird hit the window, and unfortunately, birds hitting windows, especially 20 feet in the air, it's not going to end up as a good outcome. Now, in this kind of situation, I find humor in it. Well, unfortunately, she doesn't. It's not necessarily unfortunate, but that's how she is. She's very into nature, very loving and caring for animals, and she was hit by this a little hard. So even though she understands me, even though I understand her, even though I know wildly how we differ in things, I felt the need to apologize. I gave her her space. I went, had a little post-it, just saying sorry, went to get lunch. Ran into each other as I got back. She understood, no need to apologize, but I still kind of felt that need. It's something intrinsic, because if you're the kind of person I don't care about, I don't deal with, I really don't want to deal with, let alone can't stand you, I just say, fuck it, you're you, You can't deal with me, so whatever. But if I see that you're good, then it's not hard to do. I know a lot of good people. I'm very fortunate in that aspect tonight and throughout my life. I just tend to apologize because I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be a dick. And I guess, am I alone in thinking that? Am I the only one that doesn't want to be a dick? And I hope, Sean, if you're listening, you can feel free to interject. More than welcome. But it's just that never sits well with me. I don't necessarily want that to sit with me for some reason. Even though I admit I do a lot of dick things. I do things intentionally to be a dick. That's how I am. The squid has many forms and many tentacles for a reason. So that's just something, especially tonight. And I know for all you Catholics out there, it is Ash Wednesday, very sacred day, and a little bit of a topic of personal conversation with my mom, her wanting to go to Mass, me, don't even get me started. But whenever she has moments and questions like this, when it comes to her faith and why she does things, she comes to me. And me being me, I don't see it as being enlightening, just being informative. And I get these questions, like, why do we put our so-called faith into these things? Why do we consider things sacred when it's truly how we honor and serve our respective deities that we believe in? Are they really not in their acts? Are we really not doing that by the things that we do and how we truly live? For is that not the root of things? And I guess me being the way I live and following the, in my mind, one true supreme commandment of not being a dick, that's why in situations to where even though I'm construed as not being a dick, even though the things are A-OK, I still feel the need to apologize. And again, if you're listening to this now and you're still wondering where Saki is and you missed the beginning, she's not here, and I apologize for that. But trust me, I'm doing the best I can. There's a lot of things going on, and I felt the need to kind of dish it out. And like I said, you can tweet me if you're listening live, which I hope you are. That would be awesome. At Squid Sportshead. Let me know about these things. So that's really kind of what I started with, because those are the kind of what's prominent. Maybe this weirdness continues as long as it's good. I make money. I do other things. And I culminate this into a positive life experience. I'll take it. But if out there in the cosmos, I mean, come on. Could you not send it to me this way? Could you not create all of these celestial events at once? I mean, really, we have enough going on. We really do. That said, something else happened just last night. Now, we all know the presidential election, how it turned out, what's involved, who's involved. We've seen it on the news. We've gotten into arguments over Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We've sent memes. We've looked at memes. We've laughed. We've thrown our phones across the room. We've punched things. Worse. We get it. And while I do have news that, yes, all this time behind the scenes that there's a petition in going towards the Supreme Court and advancing about potentially nullifying the election, and I do bear good news of the fact that this could be heard or will be heard on the 17th, so things can happen. Yes, I know if you've read 100 to 1 long shot, but think about it. We're coming off a year. The Cubs beat the Indians in the World Series. The Cleveland Cavaliers won the NBA title. The Leicester City Foxes won the Premier League. They were 5,000 to 1 shot. So don't start me on long odds given everything that's happened in the past 12 months. If you get this far, crazy shit's going to happen. But before we get to that, last night, Agent Orange delivered the petulant address. Sitting, using a rather poor, unfortunate widow. Such a good woman doesn't deserve to be a widow, but is, thanks to Trump, and a botched mission that should have never gone ahead in the first place. He used her as a prop, gave a whole bunch of vague details, trying to move around billions of dollars in spending and this and that for defense and cutting these programs, really saying nothing, really proving nothing, other than the fact that a lot of people were wrong and maybe he can read after all. He was able to read a script or a teleprompter or both. I don't give a fuck. He read. But I'm hearing all these stories. All of a sudden, oh, this is what we were waiting on. This is the famous pivot. He's presidential now. Really? You're going to ignore what this man spouted for a campaign for a year and a half. You're going to further ignore everything he said 4 or 5 years prior to that. And you're going to further ignore the provable, sketchier, shadier parts of his history dating back to the 80s? I mean, that's like saying I'm qualified to be an AMS certified meteorologist because I can go outside, look up at the sky, see a few things, and not shit my pants. I can do that. But last time I checked, being a meteorologist requires a lot more. Like, going to school, getting a degree, all sorts of things, and job experience, and blah, 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 blah. But no, that doesn't seem to matter anymore. It doesn't matter that as a leader of our country, we need to have class. We need to have knowledge. We need to have a worldview. We need to be able to not only embrace crises, react to them, prevent them, get what's going on. Even aside from stirring the proverbial pot, we want the best possible representative that we could get. But through various ways and means, through the election, electoral college, Russian hacking, Putin telling people to push some buttons, and Nigel Farage in the UK helping Putin and Trump and pushing a whole bunch of other buttons were stuck with him. Have we really, as the sect of journalists, not the whole media as well, but journalists, and I'll break it down even to some political journalists and pundits, has the bar gotten so low that we're supposed to give Cheetolini a pat on the back, pat his head, say you did a good job, Donnie, because he can do something I could do that I'm sure all of you listening out there can do? Especially those who have done some work in film or television, or even if you had drama classes. You know how to read from script. You know how to be human. You know really not to mess up. And if you do, you don't mess up a lot. But is this really what we're coming to? Is this really what we're going to be reduced to as far as our news? what we rely on, how we seek information when we're not looking at our phones or our tablets or our iPads or laptops or any kind of screen where we can tap and do our own research. If we want something to be told to us, and this is what the news is and has been, is this what we really want them to say? Is this what we want to be thinking about? It's not me. I don't watch CNN. I only watch a few hosts on MSNBC. Fox News can kiss my black ass. It could since day one. I mean, is this really what we've reduced ourselves to? Have we become a class of ADHD, zoned out, wanting to be entertained, or staring and dribbling out of our mouths, not wanting to think sort of society to where this is the best we can get? Once respected people like Van Jones completely ignoring history and just rewriting based upon less than an hour? Are we so isolated and looking into singularities that we miss the greater pattern? Why are we looking at dots instead of connecting them? Why is it so successful that you don't have to think critically to advance anymore, to get the wealth, to get the experience, or to achieve all of this power, fame, and what have you? What happened? And what scares me even more, are we really going to have to deal with 4 years of this? Or for the first time in history, we've had 3 consecutive 2-term presidents. We've already seen that the electorate as a whole, up until these past few months, hates change. Are all of these things just going to be wiped away? Are all the protests going to mean nothing, and are we going to have to deal with this for 8 years? If so, take me now. I would still be relatively young man come the 2024 elections, for we know for sure Donnie Dollhands would be gone. I would still be shy of 40. But what will I have lived through? What would we as a country have lived through? What would we as a society have lived through? Will any of these things be left? Would we still even be here? Would we be post-apocalyptic, like in Fallout or any sort of dystopian book or movie or television series loves to portray? Will we be there? Will we be there sooner? Can we avoid it? If all of these people are now all of a sudden shouting, they're more optimistic because we can put a debate to bed that the apparent, technical leader of the free world can sit down and read. I am not holding out a lot of hope. Should I? Part of me wants to. There's a part of me that's like, find a way to smoke myself into sheer oblivion. Don't necessarily join the herd of sheep, but be numb. And if I'm feeling that way, what's that saying about a lot of us? Are we looking to an escape to avoid accepting this reality? Do we drink? Do we do drugs? Do we find ways to make ourselves extinct because we don't want to fight? It's happening. Psychiatrists, psychologists all over are coming out and saying their businesses are booming. So many patients are coming in with so many problems related to what's happening politically in that current landscape. I wake up frustrated. I wake up scared. I wake up wondering, how am I going to live my life? It was average even before this. It wasn't all peaches and cream. I got my conundrums, I've got my demons, but what about those that are bigger? What about those that are legitimately committing suicide? Are we going to see a point to where that's going to be more rampant? Are we to a point to where we could see another Jim Jones or another cult come in and have a scenario and everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid on the mountaintop and the TV news choppers coming in, getting an aerial view of the bodies? Things that happen within what I call the realm of reason, these are there now. These, if you look at the patterns, they're shockingly reasonable. That of all makes me think. And I hope that it makes everybody else think too. We talk about the air, talk about the water, protection bills, the mentally ill getting guns, protests like Standing Rock, climate change. We should all just take a moment and think. If anybody, be a politician, friend, neighbor, whoever, really wants to utter the phrases about the world that we leave for our children and grandchildren and their children, there's a genesis to that. That genesis is easily now. Think about that. Alright. Now that I've gotten all of the stuff that I normally say while I'm sober off of my chest, let me say what I would normally say and want to talk about while I'm drunk. And if Sean is listening, could he kindly manifest himself out of the ether of producers? Because I have a question or two to ask of him.
Yep. What's up?
Okay. Now, I got to ask you two questions that are very prevalent just to this month in particular.
Okay.
How big are you on college basketball?
I'm not big on college basketball. I watch it when March Madness comes on. That's about the only time I watch it.
Well, I'm glad you see that, because do you realize that it's just about that time?
Yes, I do.
I was looking at the calendar and the fact that at work, as part of my status, I update with University of Miami, both their men's and women's teams. I realized regular season's almost over. Then comes your week of conference tournaments. Then everybody gets glued into Selection Sunday. Now, when you take the approach to March Madness, how do you consume it?
I usually try to watch as many games as I can. You know, like I'll have one game on the TV, one on the phone, and just kind of watch it while I'm doing other stuff, because it's one of those things that's really consumable while you're doing things, because let's face it, the thing that really matters is like that last 5 minutes or whatever, when if it's closer or not,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing how the finish goes.
So you would be the kind of person, and I may never explain why I have this example, but if the occasion arose to where
And
you
I
would,
do the brackets and stuff like that too.
okay, we'll get,
Yeah.
that's actually good, because that's my next question. But so if the occasion arose to where you were able to get a vasectomy, you would be one of those guys that would schedule the vasectomy so that way you could be sitting on the couch, ice pack appropriately positioned for 2 days, and just watch the tournament.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that. Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, it has been very prominent in the recent years. Doctors always get appointments around this time because they say you have to sit, relax for about 2-3 days, not do anything strenuous. Lo and behold, it's March Madness. Especially you, as you described. You have one game on a laptop, another on a phone, another on a TV. So you have a potential 3-4 screen experience. You could be one of those guys.
Right.
Okay, alright. So, I say this because I don't necessarily go that far, although there are operations that I am still legitimately considering. I mean, if there's a way my insurance could cover the whole outpatient semen switch, I would love to do that. But I ask because, and I say this because, well, I'm not always surrounded by those kind of people. And I wonder, what did they do this time of year? You mentioned you do brackets. I do a bracket, even though I'm god-awful at brackets, which describes most of the country, so I'm not alone. But it's something that we can occupy ourselves with. And even me in particular, I follow college basketball, starting really with conference play, because Miami is notorious for being sketchy in conference play until recent years. I think we could make a run at the ACC title again, crossing my fingers. But then I have my team that I root for, but I still consume a lot of March Madness. And I find that even when I stop doing brackets, even times when Miami is out, and unfortunately that's been early most years, I can still consume it. Now, as kind of a follow-up question with you, you do brackets. A, is there any strategy to your bracket? And B, even on years where you don't fill out a bracket, do you find yourself rooting for anybody?
I mean, Arkansas is my team, so if they get in, I root for them, and then.
Really?
Yeah, I was born in Arkansas, lived there for the first 5 years.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I have a lot of family from there. My half of my family is from there, like my dad and all that. So, so yeah, I mean, so I go for them, and of course Texas if they make it, just because that's where I lived for a long time, and that was sort of the other team that we rooted for, TCU. And then North Carolina has always been like a team that since I was a kid, like just I always kind of really liked. So
There's a part of me that wants to be disappointed because of Miami's history with both of those teams, but I like you too much to count that against you.
I thought about that after I said it. I was like, oh yeah, he's a Miami fan. He's
So I'm going to let that slide. You earn a pass for now. But if anything happens like it has in recent years, just be warned. You'd have 2 fights to deal with. Not just our soccer one, which I get to stay out of, but then I'd have another bone to pick with you. So, we'll get that out of the way. And to kind of wrap things up for the last segment of the show, talk about college basketball, how are you as far as baseball?
It's not one of my favorite sports at all.
Okay, any particular reason why?
I just get bored watching it. I mean, I'll watch my Rangers,
Mm-hmm. Well, I figured.
but I don't really follow it that much, just because it's not entertaining to me. I know this is coming from the guy that loves soccer and everything, and there's a lot of people that will say that about soccer, but
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Well, what if I were to tell you that baseball, especially Major League Baseball, they're already implementing something to make it a little less boring, and I can think of ways that would continue the cause. How would you like that?
you hold on, things that would give me ways to continue the cause.
No.
No.
Things that would make baseball less boring.
Like the new rules that they're thinking about implementing.
One of them that they're going to implement, others that I think they should implement sooner rather than later.
A way to make the game go faster.
Yes. One thing that Rob Manfred, commissioner of Major League Baseball, still has some work to do, not to be seen in my eyes as Bud Selig's protege, but he's getting there. They've decided to speed up the intentional walk. Rather than having the pitcher actually throw 4 pitches outside of the zone, the manager will just signal to the umpire from the dugout, and the batter will just take his base. That's going to go into effect this season. That's a good start. But Commissioner Manfred, and I hope you listen, and in part because I've been too lazy to write a letter, even though I know I should, I would like you to hear me out. You mentioned in an interview on SportsCenter, late at night, I was fortunate enough to remember and DVR it, there were some rules that are being floated around that you're looking at. First of all, the pitch clock. I watched the Arizona Fall League. You use the pitch clock, 20 seconds. I think it's great. You have clocks in the minor league parks. You are getting the major leagues a year so they can build the necessary infrastructure, put the clocks in all of the parks, so that way you can get it going for 18. That's great. Pitching changes, time in between innings. You're doing the right thing and you're making progress there. Big plus. Now, other rules that you're floating around for what you described as the lowest level of the minor leagues, which, if I remember correctly, that's short season A-ball. Very, very regional, very small teams. In the baseball hierarchy, it's the bottom of the barrel. You want to borrow a rule from softball to where if a game goes into extra innings, then teams would start with a runner on second base. I think it's a great move for softball, even though I've still seen what should be 7-inning games still stretched to 13. Why don't you try what you're already doing in spring training in the Arizona Fall League, start it up in the minors and work your way up to the majors? Use ties. You have a rule in the AFL to where games can't go past 11 unless it's a championship game. Spring training, you have managers get together all the time, say, hey, are we going 9? Are we going 10? What are we doing? They have a little powwow and they can decide right then and there and everybody knows what they're in for. Why don't we have something like that? Why don't you do like Asia, which, let's face it, Japan won the first couple World Baseball Classics. Hint, hint. Why don't you do like that and just, for regular season games, ended after 12. Everybody can still get drunk, have 5 innings to sober up, and then catch the train home. Why not do something like that? It's very simple. It's easy on logistics. And I know a thing or two about logistics, not just because of my math degree, but I've also longtime friends with app developers that are working on major baseball-related projects. I can't exactly say what, agreements and blah, 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 but why not do that? Now, if you're going to start implementing these, you want to get a younger demographic. You want to get millennials like myself and my awesome producer, Sean, to get us to watch more often. I mean, come on. You've already got the reputation of being an old fuddy-duddy boys club with a bunch of 50 and 60-year-old guys and kids bringing gloves and nothing in between at the ballpark. You're so steeped in tradition when you should easily evolve. And you can. Now, I'm going to have further arguments like be adapting to the rest of the world outside of the Central League in Japan and making the designated hitter universal. I can easily suggest all kinds of scheduling and things for when you do expand. As you said, that's part of your path, Commissioner. Once you have the CBA, which you've done quite well, once Oakland and Tampa Bay get their stadium situations corrected, which you can easily push along for the famous or infamous best interest of baseball clause, you can make these things happen. Ignore the tradition. Ignore the old boys club. You're the young blood commissioner for a reason. Do you want to be another Bud Selig? Do you want to be a David Stern? Do you want to be Adam Silver? You got a lot potentially going on for your commissioner. There's a lot that you can do. And if not you, Commissioner Manfred, Joe Torre played the game, managed the game, won World Series. He's seen a lot of evolution throughout his many years of service to the game. Mr. Torre, you have the commissioner's ear. Sit him down. Be the old head. I know you can be. Have a little chat with him. Let your analytic guys look at the numbers. Let's see what works. Because there's a lot that you could potentially risk leaving on the table here. And I don't want you to do that. I'll still probably write that letter, but Commissioner, and I hope that we can get this to you, come on. For the good of the game. For the good of the game. Alright, well, I've done just about enough of flapping my gums for tonight. I am the Squid. You can catch me at Squid Sportshead. Got a lot of other things coming on. Got one more preview article to do. You can catch that at Inside_Arena or Inside the Arenas. We're coming up on both Arena Football League and National Arena League seasons. You can also check me out on the 2017 season preview, This Week in the AFL, at This Week in AFL. Expect that out around end of March. And if you happen to be tuning in Sunday nights at 9 o'clock, maybe you might sprinkle in a little bit more, depending on if it's a crazy enough week. You can listen to myself, Sean, who's at W2M Sean, by the way, and Rachel McCreer on Soccer to the Max. So yeah, you cannot get rid of the Squid that easily. But, alas, for myself, for Saki at Sakura Steph 309 on Twitter, and other many places. I'm not going to do her promoting for her unless she gives me more clues about these bigger and better things she's got coming for Foxy and Squid. I have my ways and means of negotiating. Leaving it at that. Goodbye. Good night. Do your homework. Always remember that it's never entirely bad to piss down the shower drain, and don't forget to be awesome.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.